Are you interested in breaking into the entertainment industry? Backstage catalogs, casting calls for movies, television shows, and other mediums, along with other industry work. Also, you can provide listings for your own projects on there. Backstage is trusted by organizations like Disney, Netflix, and HBO for work on their content. In the description of this video is a link for a special membership deal to join Backstage from me, Ryan Holman. Scott Dixon is one of the greatest racing drivers of the 21st century and, frankly, of all time. In the IndyCar Series, his main discipline, he has won 53 races, which is second only to AJ Foyt. Amongst these wins was the 2008 Indianapolis 500, where Dixon also started on the pole position and led for a race-high 115 of 200 laps. Additionally, he has won the series championship 6 times, which is second only to Foyt again. However, early in his career, Dixon went through a pretty significant slump, and that will be the subject of this video. Dixon showed his potential very early. In 2000, he won the Indy Next Championship with 6 wins out of 12 races. For 2001, Dixon was promoted to IndyCar proper with Pac West Racing. In just his third race, Nazareth, he got the win. In the process, Dixon, who was 20 years old at the time, became the youngest IndyCar winner to that point. Ultimately, he finished 8th in the championship and won Rookie of the Year. 2002 was somewhat of a sophomore slump for Dixon. This was not the titular slump. Amid sponsorship issues, Pac West shut down after 3 races. Luckily, Dixon did not miss a single race, as he got hired by Chip Ganassi Racing to drive a new entry for the organization. Teammate Oriol Servia was not so fortunate. Out of 16 races with Ganassi, Dixon finished in the top 10 times, including a second-place finish at Denver. However, he failed to lead a lap all season, and in a competitive series, he finished 13th in points, although just 17 points separated 6th place from 13th. For reference, a win paid 20 points. Dixon would recover nicely for 2003. In the off-season, Ganassi went from competing full-time in both the Kart World Series and Indy Racing League to competing in just the latter. Dixon would go with them and took to the new league like a duck to water. At the season opener at Homestead, he came through the field from starting 12th out of 20 starters to lead 53 laps and get the win. Dixon would get further wins at Pikes Peak and Richmond, where he led every lap. This season, where Dixon finished in the top 10 in 11 of 16 races, was enough to get him his first IndyCar championship. 2004 would be when the titular slump began. Dixon and Ganassi would choose to use the number 1 to represent their status as the defending champion. Dixon was the first reigning IRL champion to use the number 1 since Greg Ray in 2000. That year, Ray finished outside the top 10 in 6 of 9 races, although one of the times he finished in the top 10 was a win at Atlanta and finished 13th in the championship. This was not a good omen for Dixon. At Homestead, once again to start the season, he qualified in a disappointing 12th place, although this was where he qualified in a race he had won the previous year. By lap 31, Dixon was in 6th place and he then got past Helio Castroneves for the lead on lap 50. Suddenly, on lap 88, Dixon lost control as he entered the pit lane and his car crashed into the barrier at the end of the wall, resulting in an 18th place finish. Dixon had a return to form at Phoenix. There, he qualified 5th and spent a lot of the race in 2nd. Unfortunately, he was unable to match Tony Kanaan, who led for 191 of 200 laps. A multi-car crash on lap 181 resulted in a restart on lap 192, giving Dixon one last chance to get past Kanaan. Dixon would get close to Kanaan, but still could not quite reach him, meaning he finished 2nd. Dixon followed up his Phoenix performance with another good race at Motegi, where he spent most of the race in the top 10 after starting 6th and ultimately finishing 5th. Entering the Indianapolis 500, Dixon seemed to be in a good position to at least contend for defending his title, as he was ranked 5th in the championship. For Indianapolis, Dixon qualified in a disappointing 13th place. In the first half of the race, he remained in about that general position, just outside of the top 10. However, as the second half progressed, Dixon started to gain ground and even started to run in the top 10.
However, he was not able to challenge for the win and seemed to struggle against the Honda engines. When Rain stopped the 500 20 laps early, Dixon was in 8th place and, by extension, was the highest finishing non-Honda. Dixon's Toyota struggling against the Hondas would end up being representative of the remainder of the season. Texas would be when Dixon's season really started to decline. He started 16th out of 22 drivers and did not make much headway from there. On lap 33, Dixon and Thomas Scheckter nearly crashed on the main straightaway. By lap 65, Dixon started to run towards the back of the top 10. While the race was under caution on lap 183, he was exiting the pit lane, only to be hit by Adrian Fernandez. This would be enough to damage Dixon's suspension and result in him retiring in 14th. In the remaining 11 races, Dixon failed to finish higher than 6th at the season finale at Texas. Prior to Kansas, Toyota updated their engine. It was still down on power compared to the Hondas. Dixon ended up finishing 3 laps down in 12th place. 2 races later, at Milwaukee, he had a major crash during qualifying. As a result, an injury to Dixon's left ankle meant that he was not medically cleared to race. When the series went to Pikes Peak, Dixon's defense of his previous year's win there was poor. Although he qualified 10th, Dixon soon started to drop to the rear of the field and went 1 lap down. Additionally, his lap speeds were about 20 miles per hour slower than leader Dario Franchitti. Adjustments to the wing and tire pressure did not alleviate the problems Dixon was having. Eventually, on lap 105 of 225, it was decided to retire Dixon from the race, resulting in a 21st place finish. By that point, he was 12 laps down. The brightest spot for Dixon in this time frame would be at Fontana, the penultimate race of the season. There, he qualified in 2nd place, Dixon's best start of the season. Early on, he remained in the top 5, but soon started to suffer from understeer. Around the halfway point, Dixon had dropped to 11th and was about 2 miles per hour slower than leader Castro Neves. Towards the end, Dixon regained some of his early potential and moved back into the top 10. He would finish 1 lap down in 8th. Dixon ended his championship defense season ranked 10th in the final standings, with 10 top 10 finishes out of 16 races. However, various factors being taken into consideration make this result seem lesser. Only 14 drivers entered every race and, besides the 500, no race had more than 22 starters. This meant that the relative competition to make the top 10 in points or even at an individual race was lesser. Dixon was beat in the championship by 2 drivers, Adrian Fernandez and Vitor Meira, who did not enter every race. The struggles that Dixon had in 2004 carried over to 2005. By this point, it was clear that Honda was far ahead of its Toyota counterpart. At the Homestead season opener, Dixon qualified in 16th place. He would remain in the teens for most of the race. On lap 159, Dixon was collected in a multi-car crash as Koski Matsura lost control exiting turn 1 and, further in the field, Brian Herta spun out right in front of Dixon. As this was happening, eliminating them also, this left Dixon in 16th. Dixon did not enter Indianapolis with much momentum. By this stage, he was ranked 15th in the standings. At Motegi, the final race before the 500, Dixon was, once again, collected in a crash exiting turn 1. This time it was on the very first lap, as Jeff Bucknam lost control directly ahead of Dixon, leaving him with a 21st place finish. The 500 would be even worse for Dixon than 2004. He would, again, qualify in 13th place. Dixon seemed to be repeating his 2004 race to a point. In the first half, he remained in the teens, but started to move up. On lap 114, while running 8th, Richie Hearn moved down on Dixon. Turn 1, causing both drivers to crash and Dixon to finish 24th. In the remaining 12 races, Dixon finished in the top 10 just 4 times. Even then, Dixon retired from just 4 of the races: a crash at Richmond, electrical issues at Michigan and Kentucky, and gearbox failure at Chicagoland. The main issue was that the Toyota was down on power. A big distinction 2005 had from 2004 for Dixon was success on the IRL's new road course and street circuit races. The Panos G-Force chassis that Ganassi used were strong on these tracks. At St. Petersburg, the first IRL road course or street circuit, Dixon started in 11th place, but spent most of the race in the top 10, before ultimately finishing 6th. At Sonoma, Dixon qualified in 9th and challenged Brian Herta for the lead. Following a lap 20 restart, Dixon's pit strategy meant that he had to pit during racing conditions, not under caution, causing him to drop to 7th at the finish. The best of the season in road courses for Dixon would easily be Watkins Glen. There, he started in 4th place. After spending most of the race in the top 3, Dixon got the lead from Castroneves on lap 31.
It would be the first time Dixon led a lap in 2005.
Outside of losing the lead after making a pit stop on lap 43 and recovering it once the stop cycle was complete on lap 48, Dixon maintained the lead and would get his first win since 2003. Even with the win, Dixon would finish the 2005 season in a disappointing 13th place in the championship. However, after Ganassi switched to Honda engines in 2006,
Dixon had a strong season that saw him win at Watkins Glen and Nashville,
while finishing 4th in the final standings. The win at Watkins Glen in 2005 would start an important streak for Dixon. It started his streak of consecutive IndyCar seasons with at least one win, something that has lasted through at least 2022.
Flow Racing is the home of live and on-demand racing content from NASCAR, USAC Racing, the Chili Bowl Nationals, the All-Star Circuit of Champions, and more. This includes events, original programming, rankings, and behind-the-scenes footage. Go to the link below, also in the description and pinned comment, for a special subscription sign-up from me, Ryan Holman. Monthly subscription rates start at $12.50 per month. Now we're off to the races.